finish late. Okay, so my name's Dan Riley. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks to the organisers. Have you guys enjoyed the day today so far? Yeah, subdued, but positive nonetheless. Okay, so as I say, I'm the company founder and managing director of a company called Spearhead Interactive. We're based up in Middlesbrough in the northeast of England. My background, I've got 4.5 years in academia before setting up Spearhead in 2013. And during that time, I was focused on the virtual worlds industry and how we could solve commercial business challenges using real-time 3D technologies. Spearhead's grown over the last 4 years to become an emerging technology agency with a full digital production studio in the back end. We essentially specialize in the creation of real-time 3D software. We take 3D models of products, components, plants, sites, and cities, and then we integrate all sorts of functionality, data, and systems over the top of that in order to meet, again, commercial objectives. These solutions are deployed as PC applications, smart TVs, mobile, tablet devices, as well as things like augmented reality, low and high-end virtual reality, and some really immersive solutions as well through the use of technologies like 360-degree treadmills and those sorts of things. Spearhead land grabbed pretty much every VR hardware and technology that's been created since 2013. We have around about 8 different headsets. We've got finger and body tracking systems, locomotion devices, and full haptics as well, so you can sense and feel these spaces too. So we're really kind of pioneering a lot of the developments in the use of virtual environments and 3D technologies for corporates. The way to think about this stuff is actually quite simple. I'm going to grab the mic. That might be on? No, I'm just going to use the lectern. It's all about taking 3D content and applying animation, data, documentation, functionality, and systems onto the top of that in order to meet your objectives, and then deploying that out as either a PC application or a mobile software as well. And of course, virtual reality and all those other things fall under one of those two outputs. So really, that's quite a key message to say. VR is not just VR. VR is a PC application that you can access through a VR headset. Now, what we're really here to talk about today is this. It's a word that has 1,000,001 different connotations depending on who you're talking to and what the purpose is. For us at Spearhead, it's all about looking at a process. It's about breaking that process down into its individual component parts. It's about stripping out the old stuff. It's about slotting in the new stuff. And hey presto, hopefully, generating a little bit of innovation at the background. And the way that we look at process is through access to data. Companies have realized this for a long time, and it's one of the reasons that most of us are here. Big data analytics has been on the scene for a while. 2 issues with that, in that you drown in data very, very quickly, and consolidating that data in a way that makes sense to you as an organization is often very difficult as well. So now what we're seeing is a multi-billion-dollar industry in dashboards. Consolidating this data together in a way that we can hopefully visualize and make sense of. However, I've got 3 issues with dashboards. The first one is that you're using visualization techniques that are thousands of years old. Pie charts and graphs and all of that kind of stuff, which, whilst a senior executive within the business might understand, the shop floor engineers might struggle to engage at the same level, or indeed understand what impact the CEO is seeing based on the same data. The second challenge that you have is that you're drowning in dashboards. ERP, stock control, CRM, robotics, Google Analytics, HR, God knows what else. But the biggest issue and challenge that we have with dashboards at this point is that none of them are talking to each other. And I realize there are some vendors here that are working on those challenges and helping solve those problems, and that's really great to see from the development from our perspective. What we think we really need is a context. We need to contextualize this data in a way that makes sense to people. We see the world in 3D, we navigate in 3D, we communicate in 3D, we sell in 3D. All of these different things, we think we can transfer the digital into more the functional and the operational. Now, the first question that people typically have is, well, how? How do I start to apply this technology to my business, and how can I generate the savings or the benefits that you're talking about? Well, really, the actual question that you need to start with is why. We realize it's quite a transformative medium, and it's quite difficult to understand what's going on and why this stuff is so important, and why it's potentially, at least from our perspective, going to drive the future of business going forwards. And that's down to these 3 marketing buzzwords that we came up with a couple of years ago. Quite simply, by running stuff in 3D, we can convey it to people in a much better way. By integrating data, we can better understand what's going on within the solutions, and then by running it in real time, we can better experience what's going on, because you can control that experience in the way that you would like to. Not to mention that the applications for this as well affect oral, visual, and kinesthetic learners. So again, you can have a real impact with this stuff, regardless of user groups, across a wide spectrum of activity across your businesses. And from an IoT context, whether you're dealing in residential and whether you're dealing with commercial property, or whether or not you're looking at industrial applications for the technology, there's going to be a substantial amount of benefit that 3D can bring to the organization. Now, what I want to kind of stick to is really what we've done. Again, coming from academia, we've got a strong understanding, we believe, of the why, not just the how when it comes to this sort of stuff. And we've broken down visualization into three main component areas that I'd like to present to you guys today. The first one is the visual, then we can move into the functional, and then finally, where we're all today and what we're actually talking about is more the operational side of things. So the visual is really just about taking 3D objects, again, whether they be products, components, plant sites, and cities, and then visualizing them in a way that helps meet an objective. And those objectives could be just interior layouts and planning. So this is a project we worked on in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for a company over there, designing flats and apartments. It could be used as a sales tool. This is a 107-house site outside of Stockton-on-Tees in the northeast of England that was used by 13 Housing Group in order to sell properties off plan before construction. We can even start to visualize fittings and fixtures inside of spaces, again, whether they're commercial. We can start to visualize how they're going to work in different scenarios, and we can actually simulate what the impact's going to be across different user groups. So, for example, visually impaired people trying to evacuate buildings whenever they need to. So that really is the visual side of things, just taking that data and then being able to visualize it in a way that helps meet an objective. Where we've kind of specialized, or where we've focused for the last 4 years, has been in the functional. And that's about integrating different types of functionality into these environments to meet specific objectives, to meet purposes, and meet operational remits. So rather than me talking to you and just that sort of stuff, why don't I show you what we're talking about with this? So I'm going to come out of the presentation, and I'm going to jump straight into this. That was a smooth transition, I wasn't expecting that. So when we first set up the company, we developed 8 different demos to prove different applications of our technology to different markets. So this is from around about 2013. And what we have is a full-scale replica of the building we work inside of. So this is the Phoenix building at Teesside University. And I'm controlling this now. I'm able to walk around this premises in exactly the same way as I'd be able to. We're leveraging gaming technology for everything that we do and have done for the last 4 years. No other industry has had as much investment in rendering technologies as the games industry. Levels of security, monetization platforms, all of those sorts of things are things that can be leveraged, alongside other functionality like multiplayer, to connect teams from all over the world into these kind of environments, again, to communicate and collaborate. So, as you can see, this kind of meets quite a lot of the visual remits in terms of the software. However, we've also brought this building to life. All the doors are animated, so we get a nice little rotational animation here. If I click on the disabled door, that's going to open, and that's timed to the real world. So theoretically, before construction, I can already do my security and my disability audit inside of this building. As you'll notice, it's pretty detailed. We have every smoke alarm, every security camera, every plug socket, every fire extinguisher in situ within this model. If it exists inside the real-world building across any of the floors, it exists inside of this model. Every single door, as I mentioned, is animated. All the ladies like to go into the gents in VR for the first time, so we might as well go in there and have a quick look around there. We even have a fully working lift inside of here too. So we can move towards this, we can just open the doors. We haven't put the lift music in, but that's easily sorted. And if I spin around here, we can either use the on-screen controls that we've got over here, or of course we can use the lift controls that are on the building. We see construction as a 3-stage process: pre-construction visualization, project management during, and facilities management post-construction. So you can obviously begin to see the benefits of this from a couple of different areas in pre-construction visualization and also in terms of facilities management, but this goes a hell of a lot deeper. We actually have our own Spearhead start bar. Again, how do corporates use software and what are they familiar with? Windows start bar, let's include our own. And we've got some functionality in here that allows us to control this building. And we can control it in terms of its full architecture, its services, and also its fittings and fixtures. So if I want to come in as a structural engineer and I want to look at the clash point between, say, the heating system and the girders, what I'm able to do is make my exterior walls semi-transparent, turn off my brickwork, turn off my ceiling, make my floor semi-transparent, and then highlight my girders. So now I can look through all 4 floors, I can navigate around in exactly the same way as I had done before, and I'm able to look at all the internal plant and infrastructure across the board with this. Again, you can begin to see make your own minds up based on your own expertise as to ways in which this could impact and be beneficial to your own organizations. Now, what we're able to do again is use some camera controls. We have the ability to zoom around this space as well and put in some nice little rotational views. This piggybacks off all other forms of media and marketing. I could screen capture this as it is now, maybe get rid of that to make it a little bit cleaner in terms of the screen, and there's my marketing video. If I need some screenshots from my really nice brochure, I can just move to the position I want, hit the Alt Print Screen button, and there's my image. So I'm not having to outsource my renders, and again, operational efficiency savings across the board, all from having a real-time 3D model that you can then use. But we realize that there's potentially the biggest issue is getting corporates on board to start digitizing their premises, for digitizing their factories, digitizing their workshops, and all their residential accommodation as well. So if I just reset this model and come back into it, we've looked at ways in which we can use functional functionality in order to meet specific, again, business objectives. So we realize that a disability audit in a building like this is around about £50,000. So what we can do here is simply by, again, using the camera controls, drop the camera height down from 6'1" to 4'2", and extend the proximity box of my character to the width of a wheelchair. So again, just doing that, 6'1" and normal width, right the way down to 4'2" and extended wheelchair width. So now I can actually test this building as if I was a wheelchair user. And if I can't get through this door in this setup, there's a real problem with your design plans, which again, depending on where you are in part of that process, could cause some significant problems, 5, 6, maybe even 7-figure problems. We can also do things like, again, putting a simple depth of field blur over the top of it for visual impairment. And now I'm a visually impaired wheelchair user navigating the space and looking at what we can deliver with this for counter-terrorism training, evacuation process, where typically you'd be in touch with the blue lights and 6 months worth of planning to do anything like this. We can just remotely put you inside of these spaces and let you do what you need to do. Again, through applying functionality to this environment. But what happens if we start to integrate data? Now, we're not at this stage with this environment yet, but we do have some plans going forwards. If I just jump out of this and go quickly back to my presentation. Just keeping on with functionality for just a moment as well, we actually a couple of weeks ago had our first Holo meeting inside of VR. So we have a full HTC Vive and a load of other things set up in our office. And we connected with a company over in Paris, and we just connected inside of a virtual environment and just had a chat, walked through some design documents, did some planning live inside the environment, as you can see. Again, face-to-face communication with no transportation costs, no CO2 emissions, and again, operational efficiency savings across the board. When people talk about this stuff being the future, it's not, it's the now. And these are all things that are easily able to be leveraged by any company going forwards, your clients, your customers, or indeed internally. But where this gets really interesting for me is in the functional applications, in the operational applications, but just concluding the functional, really it's about visualizing a process. Everything we do in life is a process, from getting up in the morning and putting our socks on to brain surgery. And if we can visualize the steps in that process, we can help with training, we can help with marketing, sales, or any other activities that you guys are doing within your organization. Again, from a commercial perspective, from project conception right the way through to project demolition. The operational side of things is where we start to integrate sensors. One of the reasons that we're here today. Sensors, systems, satellite data, all of those sorts of things can be linked in and leveraged into the environments in order to, again, monitor, potentially even control these spaces using 3D contextual-driven operating systems. So we've invested in 4 small vendors at this point. A lot of our investments have come through from platforms like Kickstarter, where we're able to make quick investments and connect with the CEOs of the future. And again, a lot of the sensors that we're dealing with are typical run-of-the-mill things. So heating, lighting, pressure, motion, and air quality. Those seem to be the main 5 that we're targeting. A piece of expensive equipment you want to move, systems that you want to monitor, those sorts of things going forward. Now, what we've also done is we've built a full CGI replica of our office and studio. We're not engineers, we're not manufacturers, we don't have access to our plants and things like that. So we've built a 3D model of our office. The idea will be that we start to put these sensors into all the physical plant around our office, temperature sensor in the fridge, light sensor on each of the lights. And then we start to feed that data through into the environment. Now, if you cast your mind back to the demonstrator that I showed you earlier, if you were to link in all the lighting systems for that building into a dashboard, you may well get some really nice data that tells you that your building is 74% efficient in terms of its lighting. And that's great. I've got some data and I know what I can do with that now. but that's pretty much it. If I link that data into a 3D environment, I can visually see the guy on the 3rd floor never turns his lights off. So the innovation for understanding the data for that process could just be a poster next to his door that tells him to turn his bloody lights off at the end of the day. If we can start to integrate that more into actual industry, you can begin to see where the benefits are going to be moving going forwards. And obviously, when we start to look at things like biometric data, linking in GPS positions for workforces, linking in through things like Fitbit, heart rate monitoring, biometric sensing, things like the Fukushima Daiichi disaster, for example. If we can fly a drone through that reactor, we can get a point cloud scan of that environment, convert that into a mesh, then we can allow people to jump on it in terms of VR, work through the roles and processes that they'd want to as part of the training and engagement and dealing with that disaster, but we can also start to monitor all the different things that are going on inside that reactor as well. And then you can begin to visualize exactly what's going on within it. So once we start to combine these things with, again, other emerging trends like artificial intelligence and machine learning, we may well be in a position whereby the plant can monitor and manage itself, reordering stock for you on the fly based on the different levels that are coming through. One of the examples that we've got on our stand over there is the ability to augmented reality vehicle, blow it up to all of its component parts. If you could link that into your stock control system, anything flashing green is in stock, anything flashing red is out of stock, and you can monitor the health of a process within your organization in a matter of seconds. Wake up in the morning, check it all out. I don't need to read that report at the end of the week or decipher any pie charts. I can just see it and I can instantly understand what it means. So one of the things that we've been working on as well in the background is our virtual reality manufacturing plan. Like I said, we don't have access to any of these things ourselves, so we've just taken the initiative and we've built one ourselves. We've connected with industry across the board, public and private sector, and we've found out about 5 or 6 different locations, CNC machines, automotive production lines, loading bays, spray paint booths, kilns, and a few other areas as well. We've created 3D replicas of that over the past 3 months. We finished it on Friday, and we exported it out. We put in the navigation controls on Monday, and we're here today running in full VR, and you're all more than welcome to take a look at that. That's pretty much it from me in terms of the presentation. It was very much a case of just wanting to introduce you to the world that we live in terms of the 3D, bringing that CAD data to life in the different ways that we do that, and showing the potential and what can be achieved if we start to integrate data away from dashboards, or indeed integrating dashboards into the 3D in order to, again, improve efficiency, productivity, and move forwards from there. So again, we've got quite a few demos over on our stand, which is just over there on the Digital City stand, and I'm quite happy to take any questions you guys have got. I think we've got about 5 minutes or so. I do indeed. There you go. Thank you.
1, 2.
How do you create a 3D model of such a factory inside? How do you scan it? How do you build it?
Yep, so there's multiple ways of creating the environment. So if it already exists, then we can use existing point cloud data. Everything manufactured in the last 30 years already had a CAD specification somewhere. If we can get a hold of that, then we can save anywhere between 30 and 70% development time on the overall software application itself. There's typically a refinement process that needs to happen in terms of turning models from solid models, for example, into surface models, which is what we're using here. Obviously, we're rendering in real time, so we need to make sure that the load on the processing is as low as possible. So a good example of that is an engine that we delivered for MAN Engines back in 2014. We did an augmented reality engine for the Southampton Boat Show. So rather than taking a 2.5-ton engine, just hold a tablet up and the engine appears in front of you. That model came through at 8.5 million polygons in size, which was an incredibly detailed and amazing model, but there's no way we'd run that at the frame rates we'd need to in real time. So there was about a 4-week process to redevelop that work. However, the savings in transportation and logistics costs for MAN were more for one show than the entire engagement for the entire project. So they've now taken that to the Bauma Fair in Germany, the Miami Boat Show in Cairns. So if we don't have access to the CAD data, we have a team of modelers that can use 2D floor plans, reference photos, and just design off plan if needs be. And that's how the building that I showed you earlier was created, using nothing but 2D floor plans and reference photos. That was one 3D modeler in about 10 weeks in order to create that whole thing, and then around about the same amount of time again in terms of programming. But again, all of those costs are completely mitigated just by putting in the functionality for the disability audit. And just to give a context to that, dropping the camera height down and also depth of field blur, that's around about £150 worth of functionality. which then saves the 50k disability audit, which more than covers the cost of the CAD development. And then it's a case of, right, well, what's the next thing that costs you guys a lot of money that we can do relatively quickly and cheaply, and then just ramping and scaling from there. Does that answer the question okay? Awesome, thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah, I think that's it.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure to be here, and enjoy the rest of the time. Thank you.